Hello everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and I teach watercolor and sometimes gouache. And this project we are doing a German Shepherd.
Ooh.
Yeah. We have Michael here who's working the cameras for us.
Hello.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
And we are going to be doing this project in 6 steps. So our very first step, we are going to be doing our underpainting, which is essentially a lighter value of a painting where we start to establish our shadows. So we'll do our underpainting, step 1. Step 2, we'll be putting in the darker values on our underpainting. Step 3, we're going to actually repeat 1 and 2. Step 4, we're going to do our eyes and our mouth and our nose. Step 5, we are going to do another layer of color and value across our German Shepherd. And then our very last step, we will be doing some highlights in here. Now, this is part of our dog gouache box, and I designed these projects to use gouache different ways. So the Corgi project, we focused it more on like a watercolor and really utilized water in it as like we would a watercolor. This one, we're actually utilizing gouache both ways that you can use it, which is where we will be adding water to it and doing more transparent layers and then building up to more opaque layers. So that is why we're doing so many layers, is we're going to build up from there, build up our layers and our opaqueness and our form. We are using 2 brushes for this project, a round 2 and a round 6. These are our go-to round brushes. You can use watercolor with your gouache paint. Just make sure you rinse them pretty well when you're done. If you have a wash brush, it's helpful to have in this project. I used my round when I painted this to make sure that you guys could use your rounds when painting this, but I will be utilizing the wash. This is a 3/4 inch wash brush when doing the underpainting, just so I can show you guys how to start using new brushes, which is exciting. We are using a paper that actually I really don't think you can buy it outside of the subscription box. It's a paper made from Legion, it works great with gouache. And we have 5 colors for this project. And I'm just going to put the little tubes here. We have permanent white. We have ivory black. We have permanent yellow deep. We have turquoise blue. And we have carmine. And this gouache is from Holbein. This is their Holbein Designers Gouache. Great brand. Their gouache is really wonderful. So, okay. We will do our outline and then our oath, and then we will get started. So, okay, so we have our outline taped to our paper, just with painter's tape. And then I'm going to take my graphite paper, put it in between, dark shiny side down, and trace from there. Now, I know that usually with watercolor I say, try and press as light as you possibly can with this. But because we're using gouache, these lines are going to be painted over, so it's not as big of a deal. Now, the reason why I love gouache so much is because it's like if acrylic and watercolor had a baby. And if you are not familiar with gouache at all, and you're like, I don't even know what word you're saying right now, we have an entire beginner series that goes over what gouache is and how it is the same and differs from watercolor and acrylic paint. But the main thing is it is a watercolor. Gouache is a watercolor, but it's just more opaque, which means that you can layer on top of it the same you would acrylic, where you can do your dark values first and then do highlights on top of it, and because it's opaque, they'll show up. Where watercolor is totally transparent, so you have to build up your layers from light values to dark values.
Yeah, why would you pick acrylic over gouache? If it seems like it's just the best of both worlds.
Well, because gouache actually has a really matte finish to it. And I believe that acrylic has, the binders in it are different. So then it has a different finish and feel while you're painting. So.
Domo arigato.
You're welcome. But gouache is really popular for like illustration and things like that because it also scans really well because it's such a matte finish and photographs really well. And I personally love illustration. It's a huge love of mine. And so that could be why I have more of a gouache tendency than an acrylic tendency.
That's what I was going to say. Being married to you, I see our materials come and go all the time, and I'm surprised how big of a spot in your heart gouache has kept. You like gouache a lot.
I love gouache. Well, I feel like it has the benefits of watercolor and the benefits of acrylic, which is easy cleanup. It doesn't hurt my brushes. It doesn't ruin my brushes if I don't clean them because it's water soluble.
It's not stinky.
It's not stinky. all of these different things. But again, I just want to point out to you guys that if you're new to art and painting in general, do not walk away from this conversation that gouache is better than acrylic as a rule. That is not a rule. One medium being better than the other, or brand or whatever, there are no rules. It's all about preference. It's about what you like. And the more that you make and create and paint, you will start to develop your own preferences. And I just want to point out there that they are not wrong. They are not bad. They're like, don't be afraid to like what you like. I remember when I first started teaching watercolor, I was a little bit insecure because I used Canson paper, which is not 100% cotton paper, and I use liquid watercolors, which are dye-based, which means that they fade in direct sunlight, and that is not standard for watercolorists. And I felt like I wouldn't be taken seriously, you know, because I'm not using the best of the best material, which, like, for my purposes of what I liked, they were the best. I mean, Canson works amazing with liquid watercolor, and I like vibrancy, so that's why I like the dye-based paints. So I don't want that to stop you from having an opinion because you're afraid that you won't be taken seriously, because it's mostly like made up in our head, you know?
We've talked about this in a previous episode, but again, I like to play guitar in my free time, and I watch a lot of guitar videos. And it seems like most professional guitar players, they're not playing the super expensive top-of-the-line guitars. They're just playing like what they started on, just some piece of junk, and then like, I don't know. It's not at all what materials you use, it's how you use them.
I think it's a little bit of both. Yes, it's about how you use them and learning them. But I also think that if you get frustrated with what you're creating, sometimes it doesn't have to do with your talent or skill level. Sometimes it does have to do with your materials. For example, if you're buying dollar paintbrushes at Walmart and the bristles keep falling out and you're getting hairs in your paintings and it's making you mad, you're not doing anything wrong. It's just the quality of the supplies. So I think it's a balance. I don't want you to think you're less of an artist because you like maybe supplies that aren't the most expensive. But if you're struggling to be able to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, then take a look at your supplies, and maybe it might be worth it to invest into something a little bit different in order to accomplish your artistic vision.
There's like a bar of like holding you back that your stuff has.
Yeah.
And guitar, I feel like, especially with modern manufacturing, that's pretty low. And don't get me wrong, I'm someone who loves expensive gear.
Oh, I know.
As in, I'm like very mediocre for the level of gear that I have, so I have to tell myself that gear doesn't matter and just focus on the playing.
Focus on the joy of creating.
Focus on the joy of it.
Focus on the process.
Because when you get caught up in like, I have to, this watercolor it has UV resistance, it'll last one more year than the other one. I just feel like it gets destructive.
It can. Don't get too caught up on those things. Where if your intention is not to have your painting last forever, then like, why not use the bright colors?
Do you remember what this syndrome is called from the last conversation? GAS. Gear Acquisition Syndrome. You have gas. When you want new stuff all the time, you have gas.
Well, that's true for me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's do our oath. If you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
I promise to have fun. Oh, that was a good time.
That was a good one. Okay. Let's get started with step one. This is where we're going to do our underpainting, and this is where we're going to utilize a little bit more water on this wash because we want it to have more of a lighter transparency or more of a watercolor feel. You can use your round. I am going to use my wash. Oh, there's some paint on it, so let's rinse that off. And I'm going to mix like a brownish color. So I'm going to take some of my yellow and a little bit of my red and more yellow because that red was strong. And then I'm going to take a tiny bit of black. Okay, that's a good kind of brownish color. And then I'm going to add water to that. Because right now, we've been working with just like gouache, so it's going to be really opaque, and I want to water that down. There we go. So now using that light value, I'm going to put in just paint across the whole thing, avoiding the eye area, the inside of the ears, and the nose.
Paint the puppy, if you will.
Paint the puppy?
Yeah. It's a dog. In my opinion, Sarah, I think German Shepherds embody the word handsome more than almost anything else I can think of. They're just like a handsome animal.
Oh, they're such a beautiful animal.
I think like, I don't know how to describe it. They're beautiful, but I think they're handsome.
Yeah.
Like I think other things are more beautiful. Like a willow tree is beautiful. A German Shepherd is handsome.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's like the root of the word to me.
Now I will say with the, sorry, I'm switching gears into brushes. With the wash, it's a little bit trickier to get kind of like these curves because it is like a square shaped brush. So that's where kind of, the wash is nice because you can cover a large area in a short time. But I like my rounds because I'm more flexible in the shapes, brush strokes that I can make with my rounds. Okay. And you are going to get some blooms and some lines. That's okay. Don't stress. And now we're going to move on to step 2, which is we're going to kind of start to put in our darker values a little bit, but they're still going to be watered down. So for like on my outline here, you can see that I have a darker value kind of along the edge of this snout. Is that the right? Along the edge of the snout here, underneath here. And we're kind of like following the outline a little bit at this point. And this can be rough because we're still doing like the underpainting part. Again, we're just kind of establishing our shadows. We're kind of establishing our colors and our form. That's the point of an underpainting.
It's funny to hear your vocabulary shift because this reminds me of acrylic Aaron. If you guys haven't seen his stuff, he does an acrylic box.
Yeah.
But hearing about like underpaintings and stuff, it just reminds me of hearing him talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Aaron is a local artist in Kansas City, and he's very talented. He did some tutorials for us.
And he's so funny.
He's so funny.
I love
He's
that
also
guy.
a comedian. He's so funny. He cracks me up. And then also I want to establish the colors, the black too, around the mouth. So I'm going to take black, just black, and I'm going to add water to it because it's still the underpainting portion. And we're going to put in the black part. Around the eye too. Like so. And let's put in the ears. So the ears are going to be red mixed with a little bit of water to lighten that up, and then some of the brown that you mixed, so it tones down the red and kind of makes it more of a peachy pink.
Sarah, this process you're doing is so foreign to me as someone who doesn't paint all the time, where like you did a wash and then you like target specific areas darker. Is that you just looking at something and seeing like this area has shadow?
Mm-hmm.
That's so crazy to me.
Yeah, so how to approach this way in your own painting, like if you wanted to do your own version of this, is if you have a reference photo, the first thing that you need to do is identify the different values. Where are the highlights? Where are the value changes? Where are the darkest values? Okay? So us doing our underpainting is a way for us to quickly put those in, so then we have an idea of where this painting is going to go. It does take a while to train your eye to be able to recognize where those shifts are. My suggestion to help you, one, is you can turn your image into a grayscale image. And once you turn it into a grayscale image, it's much easier for you to identify value because it makes it monochromatic. So that is a way that you can start practicing. The second way that you can start practicing is, and there's no other way to describe this, so I don't know if it's helpful. Do you guys ever know in like photo editing or something like that where you can, like, here's a painting, but you're just selecting a little dot area of color, and then you're trying to identify that color? Does that make sense?
Paint dropper tool.
It's like a paint dropper tool. Do that with your eyes, where you say, okay, I'm only going to focus on this area right here. What color is that? Or what value is that? Okay, now I'm going to focus on this right here. Is that a darker value than this one, or is it a lighter value? And you're constantly looking at how these values and colors relate to each other. And once you can identify, oh, that is a medium value, there is a light value, and there is my dark value, it is so much easier to then start mimicking the world around us. Once you can identify values, that's a really great place to start, of where you can just start making your own painting, because then you know, okay, I know that under this tuft of fur, it's a darker value, so that's where it's going to go. Does that make sense? Okay, so that was step 1 and 2. We're going to repeat that same thing. And every time we do another layer, we're going to allow ourselves to use, we'll still be utilizing water, but we will build up our opaqueness as well. Okay? So I still have that color mix, and then you guys can decide like how saturated you want this to be, where if you don't want this to be like orangey orange, you can add a little bit of the black, and you could do a tiny bit of the blue, but just heads up, it's going to turn your color a little bit more green by putting in the blue, so you might then have to add red, and then so you might just want to add black. Okay, and that was too much. You see how like that black took over that? Not the end of the world, but just for me, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely not pulling from that color. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start kind of, we're going to do another wash. Again, it's light.
Here's my problem with German Shepherds, Sarah. When I want a dog, I want it to be an inside dog, and German Shepherds are so hairy.
Oh, yeah.
Like Birko, your parents' dog, he was just like a hairball all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like my vacuum could handle it.
Yeah, I think sometimes having dogs that shed inside, it does require some upkeep.
Maybe we could get like 2 robot vacuums.
Yeah.
Just for the upkeep. And get 10 German Shepherds. Again, that's why the idea of like a Labradoodle or something, which I could be being lied to, but I'm under the impression that they don't shed very much, but they're still like a large, cuddly dog. That seems like the best of both worlds.
It does.
It seems too good to be true. If you have a Labradoodle, comment and tell me, do they really not shed? Or a golden doodle. Any of the doodles.
Let us know. Okay, and at this moment, I just did another wash, and then I'm kind of lifting out some of the values where there's highlights on my reference photo. So if I'm looking at my reference photo, I have a highlight on the top of my eye, on the side of my face, and on the side right here, because the light is coming straight on this dog. So where it's hitting is where there's lighter values. So I'm actually just taking my round brush, and while it's still wet, just lifting out some of that color I just put down to keep those areas light value. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now I'm going to use my round and a darker value, but still add some water to it. We're not ready to do like just thick gouache paint yet. And again, look at the shadows. Look at the outline of where there are darker values and start putting those in. We're repeating step 2. And my painting is wet, so these lines are bleeding a bit. I'm okay with that because this is still kind of more part of our underpainting.
I feel like you're being very directional with your brush to mimic hair lines. Will you talk about that a bit?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So when you're painting anything, you want to think about the form itself, and you want to do your brush strokes in the same direction of how that form would go. So for example, if I'm doing my hair, like the tufts of fur, this tuft of fur curves this way. So I'm doing my brush strokes that way. This one kind of more curves to the opposite side. So does this one. When I get to the nose, it kind of, I have to think of the shape of this nozzle. It goes up and over. So I'm kind of doing it more.
You call it a nozzle. The muzzle.
A muzzle.
You have to think about the shape of this nozzle.
Sorry.
I mean, it kind of is, I guess.
Sorry, you guys. Woo. Muzzle. I'll do my brush strokes kind of more following that form. Same with the eyes. And just kind of keep going along where our outline is, looking at where those darker values are, painting those in. You just want to make sure that with every layer, you're going a little bit of a darker value. Now, I will admit that it gets a little bit hairy, no pun intended, in the ear area. Because there is so much fur and there's so many layers and there's fur on top of those layers. So just don't get too caught up in it. Don't spend too much energy staring at this, because I'm telling you, it's gonna look wrong no matter what. You know what I mean? So like, put it in, move away, and don't stress about it, because people looking will just know that that's an ear and move on. Pretty much. And when we stay this close to it and try and like fix it, sometimes we end up making it look a little bit more funky than if we were to just like let it go.
You painted a mouse yet?
A mouse?
Yeah.
No.
They're cute. You should paint a mouse.
I should paint a mouse. That would be cute.
That pink ear kind of reminded me of a mouse ear. I don't know. Like the inside of that German Shepherd ear.
Yeah. Oh, the other really nice thing about gouache is that it dries really fast. So it's nice to do like layers and stuff like that.
Are you able to, kind of like with watercolor, soften up hard lines after the fact?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm always amazed. I'm always amazed, Sarah. After that first wash, I'm like, nah, no way.
You just got to build it up. And animals are tricky because we want it to look like an animal from brush stroke number 1. And that's just, you can't look at your painting halfway through or at the very beginning and make a decision on it. It's not giving it enough time to form. It's not fair. So I'm a firm believer in don't give up. Usually you never want to stop a painting and like throw it in the trash at this juncture or even before this, because it's not really giving it a fair chance to be something. Can't make a decision on it yet, you know?
It was like me in my 20s, you know, I just got to give me time.
I know.
I made it through.
You did. Okay, I'm going to do one more layer of my black for the muzzle.
The nozzle.
So embarrassed I said that. I'm using my round 6 for this. I'm still kind of utilizing my water. I am leaving like a little bit of a thin white line between the top and the bottom. You don't have to, because we do have white gouache. We can go back in there and highlight it. But just like, I feel like it's easier just to try and leave it white from the beginning. And then we have around the eye. Okay. And I'm going to work on the ear a little bit before we move back into step 4, which is the eyes and the nose. So I already did my kind of like pink skin wash. I want to go in, and where it's coming out from the body, it's going to be a darker value. So I mix a little bit of red with black. Put that in there, and then blend that out. And just is going to give it a little bit more depth.
Remember what we talked about eye orientation a couple of tutorials ago? On the side of the head versus the front?
Oh, yes.
So I could tell that a canine is a predatory animal because their eyes are on the front of their face.
Yes.
Where a goose is on the side.
Goose are scary, man.
They're terrifying. Have you seen that picture with their mouth open?
Yes.
They have like teeth on their tongue.
Yes, I have seen that. Gives me nightmares.
And they're mean.
Okay, and then some of these like darker values that I put in, kind of going off like the tufts of fur where they kind of collect, I'm just kind of blending those out a little bit. But not all of the way. I want to save some of these highlights. So don't blend it to where you are losing your different values. Just blend it to where it feels like more of a natural transition. Let it get a little bit messy.
Your palette looks like fall.
Ooh, yeah, it does. Okay. Now we're going to switch to our round 2 and do our eyes. So I'm going to go into, is this on close-up? The actual
Yes.
eye part?
Yep.
I'm going to go into the iris first. Now the eye color is dark brown on the right-hand side and then kind of more a gold color on the left-hand side. So I'm going to mix black with the brown that I have to make it, or the orange that I have mixed. It's orange or brown, really, depending on like, but they're both true because
Kind of the same thing.
brown is dark orange. So I have my brown, and then along the right hand side here. Oh, garbage trucks are back.
Round 2.
That. And then on the left hand side, I want this to be like a gold or like a more bright orange. So I'm going to mix a little bit more yellow into my orange mixture.
Maybe they use our building as like the garbage truck driver trainee grounds. They just bring all the new drivers here. They're like, okay, now you go. That's the only explanation I can think of.
They're like, good job. You did a great job lifting up that dumpster.
All right, next.
Next. Okay, and your eye is looking funky at this point because we don't have the pupil in. We left the pupil and 2 glare spots. Okay. We're going to let that dry for a minute. We're going to go to the nose. So on the nose, I want you to mix a little bit of black with a tiny bit of turquoise blue to give it undertones of blue.
Scooch that guy left a bit. No, not your palette.
Oh, the paper.
Yeah, I want the nose in.
Is that enough?
And up a smidge. Perfect.
Okay. So I have kind of like, it's still black, but it has undertones of blue. And on the bottom of the nose is where it's going to be kind of like this darker value here. And then I put a little dash of where it transitions to a lighter value. So I put in my darker value, and then I'm going to take water and blend out to the top. I want there to be a strong color transition. And I left some spaces for glares. You can paint around them or you can paint over them, and then we'll just do a highlight later. So, okay, so you see that transition? And I'm leaving the nostril white at this point. We'll go in and address that in a second. I'm just painting around the nostril. It starts this like dark blue, black with undertones of blue, and then gets lighter. And I'm just kind of defining where, because you know how the nose of dogs have a different texture than the hair around them. So I'm defining where that nose kind of stops and turns into the like hairy part a little bit. And then let's say you like put some color down and you're like, actually, I did that too far down, which is what I just did. So I'm lifting up and I'm taking away. Okay. We're gonna let that dry and we're gonna go back into the eye. Is that in the close-up?
It's perfect. Oh, okay. You could go back.
Good?
Yep.
Okay. So using just black, and this one I'm gonna let it be thick. I don't wanna water it down too much because I want it to stay black. And I'm going to paint the eyelid here. There's a little bit of white on the side of the eye. And then we'll paint our pupil. So. And this area is throwing you off, this white part. We need to gray that down. because it's like where the tear duct is. So it's not quite white, it's not quite black, it's not quite pink. It's just like a medium value. I'm going to put in there. And then here is the really great thing. So let's say we did, because I'm looking at this eye for my German Shepherd, and I'm like, I don't know, it feels, something doesn't feel right. And I think what happened is the iris part on the right-hand side of my pupil got lost and got covered in black too quickly. That black edge here is too thick. So I need to go in and put like a white there so I can adjust the size of my pupil, and then I'll go back in and paint it over with orange. Okay, so this is just kind of like step one in going back and adjusting that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And that is the beautiful thing about gouache, is I can do that. It gives me the freedom to do that, where watercolor, we don't totally have that freedom.
If this were watercolor, would you just try to paper towel it out of there?
If it were watercolor, yeah, I would try and lift the color out using water and a paper towel and blot. Or I would use like bleed-proof white and maybe...
And don't tell anyone.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind telling people. Okay, we're going to let that dry for a second. We're going to go back into the nostril. Is that nostril in the...
It's perfect.
Okay. And we're going to take black, and on the top part... Oh, that was too much water. There we go. That is, I think, the scary thing about gouache, is sometimes you just have too much water on your brush, and then like your brush stroke gets really thick. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to use just black at the top ring here, and then it kind of transitions to more of a gray. So I'll just add a little bit of water. Okay. So our nose at this point should be mostly done. You can do, if you want to do a couple highlights now. Sometimes I just can't wait to do little details, so if you want to do them now, you can. But just like a little like boop, boop. Highlight here. Highlight right there. A little nose.
I feel like I'm even picking up some of that like dog nose skin texture from that nose. That's good. That's good, Sarah.
Thanks. Okay, and then while I'm waiting for this to dry, I want to show that like the shape of the eye. So I'm going to do a little extra dark value, kind of like as it's going in around the corner of this eye. I think there's even, gosh, I wish I could remember it. I think there's a tutorial out there where it's just the eye of a dog. It's like a super detailed, like big painting of just the eye of a dog, which would probably be really helpful for you guys right here. I'm not sure who the teacher is, so if anyone knows, they can say, but that would probably be helpful if you guys are feeling a little bit lost in this eye. Okay, now I'm going to take that orange and paint over that white and see if that fixed the shape of my eye. Oh, that's starting to feel better. I just want like a swoop of just like yellow, like, oh, there's water on my brush. Like just like a warm, boop, boop. Gold. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry for a second before I go back in and mess with it. And we're gonna move on to step 5, where we're gonna kind of look at our dog holistically again. I'm gonna switch to my round 6. And this is where I'm gonna start letting my layers be more opaque. So you're going to mix more colors and just not add as much water to your palette as you're mixing, so they can be thick. So again, I'm just kind of going over these dark values here where the fur is kind of gathered. At the top of the head, it's a darker value. On the side here, look at your brushstroke direction too. The ear is a darker value than the top of the head. You see how there's that section right there. And then we got like this funky, all this tufts of hair and wrinkles coming out here by the ear.
It seems so scary to do, to like just chunk on top of your painting.
It does. Sometimes I think that like painting and you have to have this feeling of like fake it till you make it kind of thing, where I'm just like, I'm gonna confidently just make some crazy brush strokes and introduce some crazy color to this, and I'm gonna pretend like I know what I'm doing so I don't freak out.
You can't be too precious about it or you never get anywhere.
And also, I think it depends too on the way that you like to paint. For me, I like being a little bit more open and not too precious with my brush strokes, because I like brush strokes. I mean, Impressionist painting is my favorite kind of painting. I love being able to see the texture and the color and the variation between it all. That's a personal preference. Where if you're like a photorealistic painter, which is amazing, but not my specific style, then you would probably be really mindful of your brush strokes. You'd be really mindful of how you're blending and all of that. So again, it kind of really boils down to how you want to paint, what you enjoy doing. But I will say that as a beginner in anything, we're so afraid of doing it wrong that we tend to be more precious than we need to be, which sometimes is not helpful. Actually, it makes it a little bit harder. A lot of the times in art schools, we spent a lot of time doing paintings that were timed, because then it teaches you how to make decisions fast, how to be able to recognize value, form, and shape quickly, because then you don't get frozen with fear of messing up. So if you're really interested in learning to improve those skills, I highly suggest you timing yourself as you paint. And you know, it would even be extreme where like here's a person doing this like crazy shape, and then you'd be like, you have 30 seconds to do this. And it really helps you identify angles and proportions quickly. So you can start with like 5 minutes I'm going to give myself to paint this flower, and then work from there. 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 2 minutes, you know, like play around with it. And if you keep doing that, it is amazing how quickly you will learn how to identify shape and form. Okay, it's looking good. I'm gonna do another layer of black for the nose. I mean the muzzle. I almost said nozzle again.
You can call it a snoot.
A snoot?
Boop that snoot.
And so this one is going to be a little bit more opaque.
It's so funny that you keep getting caught up on nozzle. That's the
I
funny.
know.
They're nozzle.
It's just in my mind, like nozzle and muzzle are like the same in my mind, so I'm struggling.
We actually looked up snout a few tutorials ago. Do you remember that?
I do.
I guess it's endemic to mammals.
What were we painting?
Something with a snout. Oh, no. Was it just a nose? I don't remember.
I don't either.
You paint a lot.
And there's a little tuft of black, like here, hair underneath the muzzle.
That's his neck beard.
His neck beard. Okay. Our German Shepherd's starting to look pretty good.
Sarah, as a female, when you're going to name animals you paint, do you immediately go to female names?
Nah. Do you immediately go to male names?
No, but definitely like German Shepherds, I would.
I think it depends on the personality more of this animal that I decide.
I just feel like this one is a Sheila.
Oh, I could see that. Okay, I'm gonna go in on the ear and even do another round of even darker. Kind of more along here. And kind of just follow the outline. I mean, it does get a little bit crazy in here, but I'm going for loose. I'm going for just like general information. I feel like I need to actually darken this area as well, and the nose. I think I maybe rounded that too much. How does that look on camera?
Looks fine.
I'm wondering how I'm going to lift it up just for a second. Okay. I might have made that bottom lip a little bit too thick. And what you can do is I could take my white, and if it's nice and thick and clean, like a clean white, you can do a couple layers and kind of like reshape that lip.
I want to scooch that puppy a little bit left again.
That good?
A little bit more. Perfect.
Okay. Now I'm going to go back into the eye and kind of like readjust it a little bit more. I feel like this white highlight that I added is too bright, so I'm going to tone that down. And I know that I painted white on top of that black to thin out that black edge, but now I need to thicken it up just like tighten it up a little bit more. It doesn't need to be as thick as it was, but there we go, that feels better. And then I'm going to take a little bit of orange, and where I put that yellow, I'm going to soften that up too, just a little bit.
Who's your favorite dog you've ever experienced?
My favorite dog I ever experienced? Olive.
Olive the pug?
Olive the pug puppy. We had a little puppy for a little bit.
She was cute.
She was so cute.
I'm going to tell Harvey, our current dog, that you didn't pick him.
I love Harvey. Harvey is a great dog, and he's so good with our kids, but he's a little crotchety now. You know?
He's like 12.
I know. I shouldn't hold that against him.
And he's not like snappy crotchety. He's never like snapped. He just like likes to be alone. He likes to like run away and hide on the...
He's so sweet with our kids too. I mean, Arlo will pull his tail all day long, and he just kind of like gets a little bugged, and he like walks off. He's like, let me sleep.
That dude's old, and he's had a crazy life.
He's had a really crazy life. Oh gosh, and he sleeps with Ella every night. It's so cute. Ella and him are like best friends.
Ella and Luna currently are in this like treating him like a human baby mode. They'll like wrap him up in like blankets and like talk to him like a baby and carry him around. He probably loves it.
He probably does. Okay. I think we're looking good here.
Looking premium.
Looking premium. At this point, since we're on kind of more like our last layers of this painting, I am being a little bit more liberal with my opaqueness. I want more thicker strokes paint in there. So I'm mixing a brown, and I'm gonna go in and kind of do some more sharper detail strokes on this fur. You wanna make sure that it's dry though.
Your dad had a beautiful Rottweiler named Samson that I really liked.
Oh, Samson, yeah, he was such a good.
Just a big sweetheart.
He was a good dog.
He was scary looking.
He was. Sometimes dogs are scary looking, but they're just big sweethearts, you know?
That was in our dating age. I remember driving to your house and that giant dog barking at me, made me terrified, but he was a sweetheart.
He was. Okay.
I also loved the Ayers, Cornell's Weimaraner named Jasmine.
Jasmine.
She was awesome.
Sweet. She was so sweet. Oh my gosh, no, I changed my mind.
Huh.
Indy.
Oh, Indy, another pug.
Okay, my aunt had this pug named Indy, and he loved me and Michael, that whenever we drove up, he would squeal.
Like a pig.
Like a pig. Every time. And it was only when we drove up, and it was the best. And Michael would take him on drives with him and put him in the front seat and roll the window down, and he just like squealed. He loved it.
He was the fattest pug I've ever seen.
He was just gosh, I loved him so much.
Oh, Indy.
Indy! And we would go, Indy! And he would just squeal. So funny.
I've never heard a dog squeal like that. It was like a pig. Eyes closed, he sounded like a pig.
He sounded exactly like a pig. It was amazing. Okay. Now, I'm kind of just tightening up. I'm using Aaron language here. I'm kind of tightening up.
What step are we on?
Oh, we're on step 5, not quite to step 6.
Okay.
I'm just kind of rounding the shapes of things off, especially with my eye, since I went back and adjusted so many times. So it's like the tightening part of the painting.
Man, I forgot about Indy. I did love that dog.
Such an amazing dog. Okay. Okay, now we're on our very last step where we are putting in our highlights. So this is where I'm going to mix white, and some of the highlights are going to be just white and some of them are going to be like a light brown. So I'm going to mix some of my white with some of my brown that I have. It's going to make kind of like a tan color. So then like on these like tufts where the hair is kind of poking out, tufts of fur where it's kind of gathered, I'm going to paint on top of it to do a little highlight. Same over here. I'm still using my round 2. I'm just trying to give my viewer enough little texture information so they know, yes, there is hair here, there's lots of hair here. So we're gonna kind of talk about, show like the highlights where these pieces are kind of hitting that light and popping out. Give it a little bit more depth. There is white hairs coming up into the ear and on like the tips, kind of on both, like crossing between the inside and the outside. I'm showing them on the highlight. I'm going to do some tufts here. Again, it's not a lot, it's not even, it's not the same brush stroke across the whole thing. We still want variation. When we get to the eye, I want to do some around the eye, but this one, I want you to do shorter brush strokes because we're trying to show that the hair around the eye is shorter. So
Sarah, that like mole, that dark mole, Cindy Crawford mole right there.
Mm-hmm.
Do all dogs have that? I feel like Harvey has that.
I think it is common.
What is it?
I don't know.
It's like a whisker mound. Someone tell us.
Someone let us know. And then as we go out of the eye, my highlights get a little bit longer. We're showing that the actual hair length increases. And sometimes these little highlights, like these finishing highlights, really just give that little extra oomph of dimension and shape that you might have been missing.
Hold on. Okay, go. The mic's just froze.
Okay. There's some on this ear too. And there's even little ones kind of coming out here like whiskers. Boop, boop. And then mix a little bit of white with black to get a gray and do kind of little gray, short little whiskers on the mouth. And I painted those and I just felt like they were too bright, so I'm blending them out. And then when that dries, I'll go back and try it again. And this is where it's just a good idea, do any kind of like finishing up. Take a step back from your painting, see what it needs, adjust. I'm gonna do a little bit darker here.
Okay, I couldn't wait for you guys to answer in the comments about the dog bump.
Okay.
It's a bundle of nerves that the whisker grows out of to make it sensitive to touch.
Really?
Yeah.
And then where the kind of like whiskers kind of come out, there's like, you know, there's like dots almost, like cats have it too. So I'm kind of putting that in here, just kind of roughly. There's little tufts of hair on the eyebrow kind of coming off this way, like boop, 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 boop. Maybe you also want to do some of these kind of, instead of highlights and using white, you can use some darks and do some detail strokes. If you have a liner brush, that would be great to use here because it's nice and thin. It's a lot easier to get whisker shapes or thin lines with a liner. Or you can just use your round 2 vertical hold light pressure. How's it look?
It's beautiful.
Looks good.
I just want a dog again. I want a puppy.
You want a puppy? Now, I will call out that I think that the black area on this muzzle, I feel like I went a little bit too far with it on the bottom, which I don't really think detracts from the painting, but if it bothers you, you can like go over it in white and then paint brown on top of it and kind of move that edge line over. Again, that's the benefit of gouache. So I'm gonna do that really quick. I'm gonna see what it looks like if you don't wait for it to dry, just because, why not? I'll do it.
Where do these paintings go when you're done with them?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, they go in a drawer because we have to keep them safe for records for LMA. I have a little
Safekeeping drawer?
Safekeeping drawer in my office where I keep all this stuff, so if we need them for like photos or something, we have them. At home, I do the same thing. I just put them in a drawer or just in a pile. I think in the group one day I posted like just a stack of all of my paintings where I'm like, this is how I organize my paintings, and it was just...
Pretty soon you could start selling them off by weight. 30-pound lot paintings.
But I enjoy to paint just to paint. I mean, I don't feel like painting has to be this thing where, you know, well, what do you do with the painting? And if there's not like a set purpose, then like painting it then has no value. I don't believe that, because I just love to paint. And so if I just end up having a pile of paintings in the end, that's what I have. I can give them away. If I don't feel like giving them away, if I don't feel like selling them and I don't feel like having a pile, honestly, I throw them away, because the joy of creating is why I do it. That's why. So it's just like, this painting served me. Thank you so much for letting me paint you. I really enjoyed it. I don't really need you anymore, so I'm just gonna toss you. But there's so many different things that you can do with paintings.
I feel like this is probably your 3rd or 4th German Shepherd for this project you painted. Do you keep all of them? Or is it just like the best one or the most recent one?
I do keep all of them.
Just for work stuff?
Just for work stuff. For the most part.
Girl, that dog is looking good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I almost called you babe again.
Thank you for that. Okay, and then little tufts of whiskers kind of coming out from those little whisker dots there.
I love your palette today so much. It just looks like fall.
Yeah.
I know I said that already. I'm reiterating.
It's good. Oh, whoa, look at that stray hair. I went a little crazy with the length of that one. That kind of changed the shape of my ear a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
That's not a huge deal. Just round it out. Now that's just a larger ear. No big deal. That's so funny. I didn't even notice I did that when I did it. All right. There is kind of like the inside of that ear a little bit, so I'm just going to do a light wash on that right-hand side.
Sheila's looking lovely.
Sheila. My neighbors had German Shepherds growing up. They had 2. They were such sweet dogs.
Nate had a German Shepherd, my buddy Nate, growing up. That was like my introduction to him. I love that dog.
And I just feel like German Shepherds are sweet and loyal.
And hairy.
And hairy. Okay, I'm going to stop messing with it. It's done.
It's so pretty.
It looks great. This was a little bit of a harder project. You guys did awesome. There were a lot of steps involved that were, repeating. There was a lot of loose painting, so maybe at times you felt like, wait, where do I put this? Where do I put this? So if you've gotten to this point, congratulations. Like, this was a little bit difficult. I kind of made it loose on purpose. I wanted to give you guys and empower you guys to make decisions, because it's when you guys are the ones making decisions, that is how you learn the fastest. So remember that if there's a moment of fear where you're just like, what if I ruin this painting? What if you ruin the painting? It's a piece of paper. And there's more paper. You can always try again. Sometimes you got to do projects over and over again until you feel good about it. That is normal. That is part of the process of learning. That's part of improving your skill. Don't feel like you're bad at this because you don't knock it out of the park the very first time. Nobody really does. So, good job. We're on Facebook. You can tag us on Instagram at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art so I can see what you guys have done. To join that Facebook group, that's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. It's separate from our business page because we seriously just wanted to create a place where you guys can meet and share and learn and encourage each other. So that's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. Michael, thank you for being here.
No problem.
And we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.